Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Leah. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about the CNA, Certified Nurse's Assistant Skills Test. I'm going to kind of touch on both the written portion of the test and the skills portion of the test, but for the most part I'm going to be focusing on the skills portion just because that is the part that most people seem to have the most trouble with. I know I did, so I'm just going to be giving some tips and tricks on how to pass it on the first try, or at least try your best to. I'm going to kind of tell my experience on taking the skills test, and so yeah, we're just going to get right into the video. So the first thing that I'm going to say about the CNA test is that it could vary from state to state. For the most part, I know that a lot of the state tests are the same based upon what I've, researched. And so what I'm going to be talking about is I'm going to be going through a couple of the steps and letting you know some things to keep in mind when you're taking your skills test. And I'm also going to be talking about my experience taking the skills test. I did have to take it twice, and I'm going to be telling you guys all about that. I can't say much about the written portion of the test, but I will say that in my opinion it was not that difficult. If your test date is coming up, it really wasn't that difficult. The main thing is that some of the questions have answers that could be right. So like if you have a question and three answers on the test seem like they might be right, you kind of have to eliminate them one by one to see which answer is the best choice. So even though 3 of the answers might be right, you have to choose the best out of the 3, if you get what I'm saying. So that's probably the most challenging part of the written test. As far as my state goes, we had a 70 question test, and I know that 10 of those questions were field test items, which means they don't count. They're just throwing those in to see how those questions do, but you don't know which questions they are, so you kind of have to just take them all as if they all count. As far as my experience with the written test goes, I definitely passed that on the first try, and the entire time that I was prepping for this test and going through the CNA course, I was not really concerned about the written test. I was extremely concerned about the skills test because of how particular it is. And if you're in a CNA course and you've looked over the requirements for the skills test, you probably feel the same way. It is very nitpicky. That is very true with my experience as well. The evaluator that I had, not saying that they shouldn't be nitpicky, they should, do their job, but the evaluator that I had definitely was not trying to help anybody out, which I totally understand that they're not supposed to. But, as a student, it kind of sucks if you miss a few small steps and if you miss a few small steps that you think are kind of insignificant and then it makes you fail. That's what I'm going to be talking about first, just kind of the rules and how you can fail and how you cannot fail. There is a skills book that shows you all of the skills, and every skill has all of the steps for the skill. You have to go through the skill, and the evaluator is going to check off the steps as you do them. If you miss a bold step, then you automatically fail the entire skills portion. It doesn't matter if you got every single step on every other skill correct. If you miss a bold step in one skill, you fail the entire skills portion of the test. That does seem really harsh, but at the same time, the bold steps are really important steps in these skills. So I totally understand why it is so harsh. But it just kind of sucks because I know you go in there and you're so nervous, and you would definitely do this in a care setting, but your anxiety and your brain and your nerves, that just don't go well together, and you forget something. So the good thing about the skills test in that respect is that if you do forget something, you are allowed to tell them you forgot to do this. They're going to ask you, when did you forget to do it? You tell them, and then you complete that step. You don't have to go through the entire skill again to include that step. You just have to complete that step and then continue on with the skill. And that is as long as you have not said skill complete. Once you have told the evaluator that you've completed your skill, you cannot go back. So if you forget to wash your hands at the end and you say skill complete, and then you say, oh, I meant wash my hands before I said skill complete, it doesn't matter because you didn't say it before skill complete. That's another thing to keep in mind. Always remember the last 3 steps are always going to be bed in the lowest position, call light in hand, and wash your hands. Those are the last 3 steps of every single skill. Another thing that I tend to forget a lot, and not that I would forget to do this in the actual care setting, but just because you're working on your partner or a mannequin, it's easy to forget privacy. And that's not going to make you fail a step if you forget to pull the privacy. Once or twice, it's not going to make you fail the entire thing because it isn't a bold step. But let's say you forgot to pull the privacy 3 times and you didn't wash your hands, for 4 skills, and you missed another step. If you miss a lot of the steps that aren't bold, if you miss enough of those, then you can still fail even though maybe you got all of the bold steps. Those are the two ways that you can fail. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience. There were 6 people in our class. We were partnered up evenly, and they did ours in alphabetical order. I was like the second group to go out of 3. Basically, when I got in there, I got my list of skills. I really couldn't hear anything. It was super unfortunate because I knew right then. I mean, I thought I made an educated guess, but at the same time, I was not confident about the answer that I wrote down at all. And of course, if you miss your measurement skill, that's automatically a bold step. So if you miss your measurement skill, then you also fail because that's a bold step. Measurement skills are going to be blood pressure, urine measurement, weight, pulse, and respirations. Those are the 5 measurement skills that you can get, and you'll only get one of those. So one of your skills is going to be hand washing. The other skill is going to be a measurement skill, and then you get 3 skills, just random skills that, you've studied in your study book. And when I walked into the test room, I was hoping that I did not get blood pressure because I had had an ear infection the week before. I wasn't hearing well. I had practiced doing blood pressure the night before, and it was like pretty wonky, like complete, I'm not the best at it, I don't know, but I mean, throughout the whole course, I was doing really well with blood pressure. The night before, I couldn't hear like anything through the stethoscope. And I was really worried about it. So I was like, if I don't get blood pressure, I'll be fine. Because I had studied and studied and studied all of the steps of all of the skills. And I even came in an extra night out of the week that we weren't holding class just to practice. And so I was just like, okay, if I do not get blood pressure, I'll be fine. So we go into the testing room and I get to see my skills. And of course, I get blood pressure. I'm like, oh gosh, okay, well, If I can't hear it, I'm just going to make a good guess. You can be 8 off from the top and bottom number. So I was like, well, there's a good chance that I could just guess if I can kind of get it in the ballpark. But I still was not confident at all that I would be able to pull it off. And what was really crappy about my situation was that blood pressure was my second skill. So after I did hand washing, I was sure that I didn't forget anything in hand washing. And my very second skill was blood pressure. That meant I had 3 left after blood pressure. So if I failed blood pressure, and I knew I failed blood pressure, I would still have to complete the last 3 because she can't tell me that, hey, you already failed. So that's exactly what happened. I got blood pressure. I listened for the beat. I listened for it. I just couldn't hear it. I repumped it 3 times. I even switched arms one time on my partner. And basically, I just really couldn't get a grasp on the sound. I couldn't hear it well, and I just winged it. Yeah, not my best move. Like, as soon as I walked out of there, I was like really wishing that I would have just tried it one more time. I was like, maybe if I would have, because the 3rd time that I listened, I could hear it better, and I was like, you know what, I still don't know exactly what that bottom number was, but I'm just going to go with it. I'm going to write something. And as soon as I left that testing room, after I had completed all 5 of my skills, I was so upset. I was like, if I had just redone the blood pressure one more time, like if I had just repumped it, because you have 30 minutes. I was definitely not going to run out of time because the skills that I had gotten, actually, they were really quick skills. They didn't even require gloves, all 3 of them. So I would have had time to repump it. I just kind of freaked out and was like, okay, I'm done. And I just wrote something down, knowing that I really didn't hear it well. And so even though I know I failed right in that moment, literally right after I washed my hands, I still had to go through and complete all 3 of the skills. And I knew for a fact, like, I did really well on the last 3 skills. I didn't miss a step. If I did, it was like really minor. I definitely didn't miss a bold step. Like, when we walked out, I just knew it. I was like, I didn't pass. I know I didn't pass. I know it was blood pressure. Like, I was so upset. And sure enough, we got our results back actually 4.5 hours later. It says you should get them within 24 hours. And we actually got them within, like, 4 hours. Maybe a little less than 4 hours. And yeah, I checked the results, and it said, instead of saying, like, congratulations, you passed your written and your skills exams, it said, you can now schedule your skills exam. Yeah, so I was so upset. At least in my state, you can only retake it 3 times. And a girl that was taking the test with us actually was taking it for her 3rd time. And so I was really nervous. I was like, okay, if I failed, I'm never retaking this test again. Like, I'm so upset. I'm not retaking it. I was like dead set on not ever taking it again because I'm a quitter. But I'm not a quitter because I retook it, but we're going to get to that. So my mom was just like, if you did fail, it's okay. You know what you messed up on. You can redo it. I scheduled to retake my skills exam like 3 weeks. It was almost a month later, actually. So I retook the skills exam on January 11th, and I actually had to drive almost 2 hours to take the exam. I could have waited until the test came closer to me, but I really wanted to get it over with because it had already been a month since I'd been in the class, and like none of the information was still fresh in my head, so I like didn't know what I was going to do at all because I was just like, it was easier then because I had been in the class for 3 months straight and I knew all of the stuff. And now at this point, I haven't been in the class for a month. It was over Christmas. I had all the holiday stuff and like I wasn't focusing on the CNA stuff. A week before, I started studying that little booklet so hard again because I was like, there is no way I can take this again. Like, if I do not pass this test for the 2nd time, I'm not going to retake it. And so I drive to the place where I was going to take the test, like 2 hours from my house, and I get there, and we're actually the 2nd group to go again. And funny thing, one of the girls who was actually in my class also had to retake. It was 2 of us who had failed. So her and I actually signed up for the same testing site on the same day so that we could like go together and not be alone with a bunch of strangers in a weird city. And we actually randomly got paired up together. It was so nice. Like, I think, honestly, I passed because her and I got to be partners. And it took so much weight off my shoulders and made me so happy that, like, of all those random people, there were like 15 or 16 people there to take the test. And most of them were taking it for the first time. Like, it was a class. And so she and I actually got paired together. Like, just randomly. Like, I don't know how it happened. I'm so happy it happened. I was so relieved when I found out that we were going to be partners because I was like, oh, yes, like we're both going to pass this. And sure enough, we get into the room. I did not get blood pressure. This time my evaluator she was so sweet. Like, I mean, of course, like, she wasn't going to let anybody pass that didn't deserve to pass, but she helped calm my nerves a lot. And I had a good feeling about it. And so I get my skills list. I did not have blood pressure. I had respirations, which also kind of made me nervous just because it's really hard to tell when someone is, how many breaths they're taking. Did my respirations, did the rest of my skills, walked out of there. And I was like, well, I feel like I passed. Like, I don't know. If I didn't pass, it was probably on respirations. Because you can only be within 2 of the evaluators count for respirations. I'm just sitting there like, hopefully, I put 18. So I hope you put 16 or 20 or like in between, please. I mean, I wasn't like super, super confident because I did not want to let myself down again. But I was kind of just like, okay, there is a better chance this time that I passed. Literally 4 or 5 hours later, I got my results back. I passed. It said, now passed your written and skills exams. And I was so freaking excited. And it was so worth it. And I cannot wait to start working as a CNA again. We did clinical setting in our CNA course for 2 weeks. And it was honestly like, it is really challenging and it's really hard and it's a lot. Like, it puts a lot on you emotionally and physically. Gosh, physically, yes. But now that I'm not working as a CNA, like, those 2 weeks meant so much to me. Like, now that I'm not working as a CNA, it's so rewarding to me and I want to be a nurse. I feel like I have my foot in the door in the medical field when I'm working as a CNA, and I'm so excited to get back to work as a CNA. I actually just applied to 3 or 4 CNA jobs in my area, and I'm really excited to start doing it again. I love being a CNA so much. As for the tips for you guys on the skills exam, practice your measurements. Even if you think you have it completely down pat, make sure that you know how to take blood pressure. Practice it. So yeah, make sure you know your measurements. Make sure that you know the bold steps to each skill. Those are very, 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 very important. If you miss one, like I said, you will automatically fail the entire skills portion, even if you miss one. So make sure you know the bold steps. Make sure you complete the bold steps. Like I was telling you earlier, the last 3 steps to every single skill are going to be bed in the lowest position, call light in hand, and then you wash your hands. And that's another thing the evaluator will tell you, but after you wash your hands the first time, you do not have to physically wash your hands after that when you are supposed to wash your hands. You just have to say, I'm washing my hands, or I washed my hands. And that's the only thing that you can tell them that you are doing without actually doing it. So if you do mess up a skill and you say, hey, I forgot this part, I was supposed to do blank at this point, if you don't actually go back and complete the step, you don't get credit for that step. So you have to make sure that you physically do the steps except for hand washing after the first time. Like I said earlier, I had a hard time remembering to pull the privacy. So what I did, and this is not against the rules, is I pulled the privacy once for my first skill, and I did not remove the privacy a single time throughout the entire thing. You don't lose points for doing extra, but you do lose points for doing too little. So you can't hurt yourself by doing extra unless you just do so much extra that you go over your 30 minutes. And I just made sure that every time I went in and out of the setting, make sure that the curtain was closed and that it wasn't open a little bit, because that's a really big thing. You just have to make sure that you are providing privacy. Another thing that seems to be something really easily forgotten, and this is just based on what my classmates and I have noticed, is that you're going to go up to your resident or your client and you're going to be like, hey, my name is so-and-so. I'll be your CNA today. I'm just going to wash my hands and then we're going to get started. And then you go wash your hands. That is part of the hand washing skill, to introduce yourself first and let them know what you're doing. And then you're going to go back and begin the skill. And like I said, you have to say skill complete. Also, like I said, you cannot redo any steps after you've said skill complete. However, after you have introduced yourself that first time to your resident, you don't have to keep introducing yourself every time you come back in the room. Basically, what I did was I introduced myself the first time, and then each time I came back in the room to do a skill, I would just say, hello, so-and-so, I'm back. We're just going to be doing foot care right now, and I'm just going to be washing your feet for you, okay? Is that okay? You don't have to say, my name is so-and-so every time you come to do a skill. You just have to make sure that you tell your client what you're doing. I'm trying to think of more important things to say. Oh, so gloves. Gloves are super, super important, obviously. While you're doing your skills, let's just say you're about to put the bedpan under your client and you didn't put on gloves. The evaluator, that is something that you cannot, skip over and then say, oh, I forgot to put on gloves. Or your evaluator is gonna right then stop you and say, you need to put on gloves. And that's just for standard precautions, just sanitary reasons. They have to stop you right there and say, you have to put on gloves here, or you have to take off your gloves here. That is something that you can't go back and correct, so you're going to go ahead and miss that step. But luckily, that's not a bold step. However, if you didn't put on gloves at all the entire time you were doing, every skill you needed gloves and you didn't put on gloves anytime, that could cause you to fail just because you've missed that step every single time. So basically, the most important things are make sure that you do not skip over any bold steps. Make sure that you know your measurements. Always remember that the last 3 steps are going to be bed in lowest position, call light in hand, and wash your hands. If you remember those 3 steps, that already knocks out 3 steps of every single skill. And just remember the first step of every single skill is just going to be to tell the client what you're doing. That's really important because just in the facilities, I've seen where people just come up to their residents and they just start doing something without telling them. And I feel like that's really important, especially in an assisted living or nursing home setting, just because a lot of those people aren't completely there. And so it's super easy to scare them. And it's just really important to let someone know what you're doing before you do it. Sorry, that was a little bit off track, but that's going to be the first step to every skill that you do, except for denture care. Yeah, those are all the tips and tricks I have for you guys today. I hope my experience and my little tips were helpful to someone. If you're taking your CNA test soon, you can do this. You got it. And if you do fail like I did, you can always retake it. I was so stressed when I failed, but the truth of the matter is that I knew the material, so just study. If you fail, it is okay. Just take it again, try your best, and chances are you will pass it. And if you don't pass it the second time, there's always the third. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you'll stick around for the next video. Comment down below if you have any video requests for me, if you want me to talk about nursing school admissions, if you want me to talk about life as a CNA, if you want me to just tell CNA stories, anything like that, let me know down below. I'm also down to do some beauty, fashion, lifestyle, travel videos, so just let me know what you guys would like to see. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video.